Suicide is not morally wrong, and yet we treat it like that. Why? Let's talk about it. First and foremost, I have an eyelash in my eye. Forgive me. First and foremost, my dog is not wearing any pants, so don't look at me, but he has to wear a diaper today. And for an indefinite period because he had a UTI and he can't stop peeing on the ground. And that has nothing to do with anything. I just thought it was cute that my dog's wearing a diaper. You turn old and you start wearing diapers. It's just the reality. I've been thinking a lot about suicide. What happens when you turn old and you have to wear diapers again and you don't want to do that anymore? What is keeping you from ending your own life? The law, weirdly enough, in a lot of places in the United States, I believe I'm gonna have to look up this. Somebody tell me, what are the laws around the United States that say suicide is illegal? I cannot believe that they still exist, but they do. Because we all know suicide is not a crime. It's somebody who is hurt, it's a symptom of illness. Like, why are people criminally, doesn't matter, but look that up for me and somebody tell me. But when you talk about doctor-assisted suicide for people who are gonna die, they're at the end of their life. This is part of end-of-life care, right? And yet the United States, by and large, I believe it's a state-by-state decision. It is legal in some places, and I know it's legal in some other countries, but I can speak only to here. You cannot have doctor-assisted suicides. I watched my mom die earlier this year in February, and she had colon cancer. And she had colon cancer for 3 years that we knew about. She had it before that, obviously, but it was diagnosed as stage 4, so it had gone on too long for her to be saved, supposedly. Now, there were treatments that they could have tried that might have helped her in the earlier on that she couldn't get access to because she was stage 4, and the pharmaceutical companies don't like doing tests of their new drugs on people who are stage 4, because even if it prolonged her life, she would likely eventually end up dying anyway, and they didn't want it to screw up their numbers. So if you're ever wondering what my opinion is on the pharmaceutical industry, they're all going to hell. The ones who own it. I don't blame people for having a job. You got a job. You're not in charge of it, But the people who make the decisions are going straight to fucking hell. But anyway. But my mom started out very healthy. She never drank. She never did any kind of drugs ever in her life. And she was a farm girl, a farm community kind of person. She ate whole foods growing up all the time. She knew how to can. You know what I mean? Very healthy woman. And I think that is why when they normally would give somebody like her, when they caught it, 9 months to 18 months, she ended up living for 3 years longer which so much longer than anybody expected. And when she finally decided to stop doing chemo, because chemo was just keeping her alive, basically. It was palliative care. She kept doing chemo so she could be there for the family for as long as she could tolerate it. She started out healthy, so chemo did not knock her out until way later, and it wasn't until chemo stopped being effective that she finally stopped doing it. And she just kept going, but when she did stop the chemo, it hit her pretty fast. She had a couple months without it where she just kind of diminished physical capacity a lot. And then her last month, mentally, she was leaving, which is normal. And if you've watched somebody die, you know that they start to leave or disengage from this life because they got nothing here. Nothing's holding them here anymore. They got other places to be. And I'm grateful for the time that we had with her, including the time that she was winding down, because it was beautiful. I was grateful to be able to be there with her through that process. I'll never regret that. I got to be part of her hospice team, and I'm so grateful for that. But there came a point, a couple of weeks before she passed, maybe 3, where she could eat, but it was uncomfortable. And she'd just eat a little bit every day to keep up her energy. But she started experiencing some pain, and they gave her good medicine. She was well taken care of. The team that took care of her, beautiful people. People who work in hospice care. You're the angels of the medical field, and you're all angels, but if there was a tiered system, I think the hospice care nurses and staff would be at the top. Anyway, I'm sure if you know, you know. But there was a point where all we did, when I'd bring her some breakfast. I liked making her she could eat some oatmeal, and she liked scrambled eggs, and things like that. And I would take my turn hanging out with her. And all she could do was watch movies, and she loved it. Because we brought up a bunch of DVDs to her room and just played movies that she loved. One of the last ones we watched was Sound of Music. But I think the last one was Singing in the Rain. She wasn't there very much. And when she was, she had joy and music and family. And again, so grateful. Just so grateful to have been part of that. And yet, it helped me gain some perspective on death care. My mom was privileged to have, my dad had very good insurance and was able to provide and had a good income. He worked in Baghdad, Iraq, and then he was a contractor, and that's all I'll say about that for now. But made really good money, was able to take care of her. She was able to keep her house. She was able to keep up with everybody and everything for a very long time, and when she wasn't, she was surrounded by caretakers. So she was able to die peacefully at home. I don't think she would have wanted, not that she ever mentioned it, but I think the natural passing was her choice and what she would have wanted. But that last week, she was uncomfortable constantly. I had to help her get into her medical bed because she finally wasn't getting up and down by herself at all. Couldn't use the walker to get around or anything, and it hurt too much to move. So I helped her get into her medical bed. So I'm big and strong, and that was my job. Lifting her became a privilege of mine. And when I lifted her into that bed, it hurt. She was in pain from me lifting her and moving her body. The body that was just done. My beautiful mother wasn't there anymore. It was just this person in a body, and there wasn't really a person in there anymore. There was just pain.
And that's when I knew she was close. I put her into her bed, and she never got out of it. That was the last time I moved her. She went to sleep and never woke up. And she slept for 4 days and then left in her sleep. And it was, again, couldn't have asked for a more peaceful way to go. But I saw it, and I know now that if you need to go because you're in too much pain, I get it. And you don't have, you're terminal anyway. Why are we putting restrictions on that for people? Why are we forcing people to experience pain when they could leave on a good note or a better one? And that's one realm. That's one piece of the problem of considering suicide as morally wrong. Because people who are in pain, who have nothing else attaching them to this world, aren't allowed to just safely and respectfully depart on their own terms. And that's fucked up. And I get why I never understood. It's not that I didn't agree. It's just that I couldn't comprehend. You know what I mean? When you can sympathize but not empathize, kind of a thing. It seemed so sad. The idea of cutting your time short when you already have so little left. Wouldn't you want to be there with your people? If you've got them, not everybody has people. But now I get it. Because when my mom was done, she didn't give a shit. The world didn't exist to her those last couple of weeks. And what if she hadn't been surrounded by love? What if she'd been stuck in a real hospice environment where no one visited her, which happens to a lot of people. And again, hospice medical staff are the best fucking humans in the world. You guys and preschool teachers, best humans in the goddamn world. But how sad is it if you work in this environment? I bet you can tell me. How sad is it when people don't get visitors and they have nothing else to be there for, but they're not allowed to just leave on their own terms? So why do we treat suicide like it's morally wrong? And you tell me what you think. I haven't read anybody's studies or surveys or anything. This is just my own opinion based on what I know, and I know a depressing amount about suicide. But why do we consider suicide morally wrong? I think it's because we're afraid of it. I think it's because culturally we're afraid of a lot of things. And when we're afraid, we exert control. We hold tight to things when we are afraid. And I think that we're afraid that if we ever made suicide morally acceptable, we'd lose more young people. But I know for a fact that that isn't the case. I know for a fact, and I don't have to have stats or studies or surveys to back me up, because I have saved lives. A lot of them. I have actively participated in the saving of many lives. from suicide. Young people, specifically junior high and high school. I was on the Hope Squad. I'm trained in this stuff. I'm a behavioral scientist. I've got credentials. I've got 20 years of experience working specifically and especially with people who struggle interacting with the world. I've mentioned this in previous videos, but I was also raised in a suicidal household because my dad wanted to die most of my, probably all of my first 15 years of life. And then he went to Iraq in 2002. Who remembers 9/11? Well, guess what? How many, not guess what, sorry, but let me put this to the crowd, the two of you or whoever, how many people watch this. Have you ever heard anybody say that 9/11 ended up being a good thing for their family? That's a shitty thing to say. But my dad going to war saved my family. And it helped him a lot too, because when my mom finally had time and she wasn't worried about saving his life all the goddamn time and maintaining a house of 7 children while working full time because she was the breadwinner, she was able to get onto the internet, 2002 internet, found a blog somebody wrote about her bipolar husband, read the entire thing, printed it out, put it in a binder, made it into a book, studied it, and taught my dad about bipolar disorder and taught me. And I imagine she was very good at one-on-one stuff with us. I don't know all the conversations she had with her other kids, but I know that she taught me. Everything I know about mental health and behavioral science and behavioral health, I started at 16, 15 with my mom doing searches on the internet and teaching me what she learned. I've gotten further than she got, but I also started a hell of a lot younger than she did. She allowed me this weird expertise in suicide. And I have always been able just to pick out the suicidal ones. In fact, it ended up being part of why I ended up with some abusive partners in the past who were also very self-loathing. It's the same thing. Narcissists would kill themselves in a heartbeat. Why do you think? Why do you think you have to have this shell of protection around your little shit pearl in your head, that thing about you that you hate so much? Because if you ever let it out, it would kill you. And by it would kill you, I mean you would kill you. If you know what I'm talking about, hit me up. I'm familiar. Narcissists and everybody who's got self-loathing in general, it's a narcissistic trait. That's why I bring it up. You just kind of, when you know, you can catch each other in the wild. You know what I mean? You ever watch Dexter, that serial killer show? He said it in one of his episodes, and I was like, I totally get it. When you see the monster in somebody else, your monster recognizes theirs. And that's how I was able to save kids. A lot of kids. I didn't count. And I don't know how directly I saved them, because when the threat is yourself, sometimes it goes away on its own because you come up with better mental health or you get into therapy or whatever. But I helped dozens of kids get into the counseling office and get, well, I called CPS, but CPS in Utah is overwhelmed and underfunded, as is every support for children in this state. But yeah, Utah loves kids. Fuck off. Prove it, government. Prove it. You don't. But I saved a lot of lives. And I didn't save them all. And there were kids who got harmed by abusers in their household that I didn't catch either. But I just kept getting better at it every year.
up until last February when I finally left education. That's a different story in a different video. In the couple of weeks, I'm not exaggerating, about 2 weeks, it was between winter break. We got back to school in the middle of January, and I was gone by Valentine's, okay? In that time span, I rescued 5 or 6 kids. I'll have to go back through and remember. 5 or 6 kids who were actively suicidal and or actively being abused at home. So those are my credentials. So when I say that making suicide or treating suicide as if it's morally wrong is contributing to completed suicides in the United States and other places where that's the cultural norm, I want you to know that I know what the fuck I'm talking about. Because by declaring suicide morally wrong, all you've done is forced these kids, young adults, middle-aged people, everybody who's suicidal, you're forcing them to hide it because of the shame you put on it. If people can't talk about it because they're afraid of your moral objections, then they won't get help. The only reason I was able to save those kids is because I'm obnoxious. I pursued those children, or I set up, that sounded bad, don't use that sound bite. I pursued the safety of those children actively, and I set up situations where kids I was concerned about would have the space to approach and talk to me because they knew I was safe. I made sure they knew. Before I left, I actually made a whole little mini social emotional learning lecture about how I intended to be the person who could defend them from their abusive dads. And then I left, so I guess I have to get back on that. But I did save some kids before I left because of that speech. That's where I got most of the ones, all of them, because they heard me say that and they approached me later. I was very careful about safety. My door was always open when kids were in my room coming to talk to me. I often and usually would talk to them in the hallway where we had cameras, or, outside, outdoors. And I was very careful about my body language, because if someone is afraid or feels shame about sharing something that is putting them in danger, the worst thing you can do is make them feel trapped. So I was very careful and very successful because I didn't make them feel bad like other adults in their lives had. Why do we treat suicide like it's a moral issue? It's not. Honestly, if you want to kill yourself, please don't take this as permission. I don't want this to be something that spurs you on to completion. But I want to fucking help you. I don't want you to feel like you can't approach and talk. Anybody in the sound of this video, send me a message and tell me how you're doing, and I will talk to you. And that's a guarantee. It's my life's work. Because what I have found is I have a, how do you say it? How did Liam Neeson say it? I have a particular set of skills. Where else am I going to use it? I'm not teaching right now. And what are we experiencing the most, at least here in the United States, but it does appear to be pretty global? Nihilism. It doesn't matter, why should I try? Do you know what nihilism often leads to? I'll let you fill in the blank yourself. But what I want to do is inspire you to live, not require you. Life isn't a requirement. Being here isn't a requirement. You choosing to be here is the gift you give the world. Because the longer you stay, and the more that you take the pain in your chest and turn it into fertilizer for sharing love, the better this world is. Because nobody, in my opinion, nobody feels empathy better than a suicidal person who has gained emotional health and emotional intelligence and regulation. Suicidal people are going to save the world. You can't go yet. We need you. So, let's stop treating suicide like it's morally wrong and start treating it like the invitation to have a fucking conversation about why everything sucks right now and maybe feel a little more empowered to do something about it. Anyway, there's so much more to say to that, and that's so broad scopes. So please let me know if I've done anything that comes across as dismissive. It's not my intention. I'm a suicidal person. It's kind of like with Alcoholics Anonymous, right? It's like with being a narcissist. Once you know you are one, it doesn't go away. Being a suicidal person does not go away. It's just something you manage. And hit me up if you need help. I've gotten pretty good at managing it. Do you want to know what's helped me the most? Loving the shitty things about myself. Loving and having compassion for the things I used to not like at all about myself. Learning where those behaviors come from. Learning how to regulate myself. Treat myself as kindly as I would treat that junior high kid, that 7th grader, who I had to take into the hall and say, "Are you okay?" and find out that they weren't. I deserve the same gentleness, and so do you. So if you need me, send me a message.